Here we go. So let me know. Just let's put some music on. Hey, everybody! Oh, we got one person on already. Nice. You jam out?
Hey, yeah.
All right, welcome everybody. I think we're live. Hopefully I'm seeing sort of a delay on there. Okay, there we got it.
Yeah.
Welcome to the debut episode of Food, Mood, Attitude. I am so happy you're here, and this is the show where we demystify all things food, mood, eating psychology, wellness, mindfulness, and more. Of course, body image. And today I have the amazing, I'm going to just shut off the music. 1 second. I have the amazing Cait Byrnes here. Welcome, Cait.
Hi, Jenny. Thanks for having me, girl.
Oh, I'm so happy you're here. We are going to have so much fun today. We're going to talk about food and mood, and I've got the original food mood diva with me today. So let me tell you a little bit about Cait. So hold on 1 second. I'm going to just move out of here for a second. Bear with me. All right. So
Yeah.
Cait is a holistic health coach and burlesque performer. We're going to want to hear about that from the Jersey Shore. Cait earned her Bachelor of Fine Arts from the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore in 2010. And she served with the Community Arts Collaborative AmeriCorps program from 2010 to 2013. In 2014, she earned her certificate in holistic health coaching from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And she's also a level 2 Reiki master, or Reiki, what are you?
Reiki practitioner.
You're a Reiki practitioner.
I'm not allowed to call myself a master yet.
Okay. But you were trained by a Reiki master.
Yes.
Cait has worked with several communities in Baltimore to create neighborhood events, parades, youth programs, and has served as the assistant director for the Feminist Art Project, Baltimore chapter. That is so cool. In her health coaching practice, Cait works with women to empower them to put their needs first and to take their health into their own hands. Her coaching technique includes a mixture of nutrition education, radical self-care, and simple practices for emotional wellness. She works with clients nationwide via phone and also teaches workshops online and in person. So I am so stoked to have you here, girl. So tell us a little bit more about you. Tell us your story and your trajectory a little bit.
Yeah. So like Jenny said, I'm a holistic health and wellness coach, and I'm also the creator of the Food for Thought, Food and Mood journal, which we'll talk about a little bit later. That's why I'm super excited, and I was so jazzed to see that Jenny was doing the show all about food and mood, because I'm so passionate about that topic. In my practice right now, I'm mostly supporting creative women who are struggling with anxiety, fatigue, like lots of stress. And, kind of doing that through a mixture of nutrition, emotional support, and self-care. Like Jenny said, I'm an artist myself. I'm a burlesque and circus performer, so I'm kind of hip to, like, the needs of creative people in general, just how, art making kind of plays into that, and kind of using art making as a tool for healing as well. So,
That is so amazing. Tell me how you got into the burlesque. I'm really curious about
Oh my God. Yeah.
Hey, let's jump right into the like debauchery.
Let's jump right in. My name's Cait Byrnes. I'm a stripper. So super interesting. I went to school at MICA, like you said, got my art degree there. And when we were there, my group of friends, we were all really interested in like pinup culture and just like the stylings of the 40s and 50s, and started to go to burlesque shows in the area because there was some really cool, like really arty performance stuff happening at the time. It wasn't just like a classic burlesque kind of situation where it's like big gown and sequins. It was like acrobatic burlesque and like these, who's coming out wearing a banana suit, and like it was just like crazy stuff, and it was so cool to see. But anyway, one of my girlfriends created a fashion line that was all burlesque outfits, like all burlesque inspired stuff, and we all modeled for it. Wow. And it was kind of like after that show that we all looked at each other and we were like, we could do this for real. Like we could just instead of just playing dress up, like we could do this for real if we want. And we started a burlesque troupe at Micah. We made it an official club, which means they gave us money to strip in front of our peers.
That's amazing.
And it was a blast. It was really cool. And, you know, it was nice for me because I had some performance background in the past. Like I had done lots of community parades and puppetry, and, you know, in high school I was on the color guard. Like I love performance, and like especially like community-based performance. So it's like a really nice way to like wrap all of that in. And specifically in burlesque, like the community is so all about body positivity and accepting yourself and body love. So it's just like the best of all of my worlds kind of combined into one, which is really cool.
Yeah, I love that it focuses on body positivity and body diversity, and like,
yeah,
it's such a beautiful, like, creative artistic expression for you, given that you're an artist, and like there's so many ways to express art, right? And
absolutely,
it doesn't have to show up in one way.
Yeah.
And before you go forward, I'm just gonna move us to a little more comfortable setting. There we go. Now we're side by side. So tell me just quickly about the circus piece of that. Like, did you go to circus school, or did you like, can you like walk on a tightrope or something like that?
No, not yet, but I want to.
Okay.
No, so most of my circus stuff is stilt walking, actually. So when I was working on the parades in Baltimore, the group that I was with, we had been teaching like kids and adults how to stilt walk, because we had all these community-based parades. We wanted like just can I swear on this? I meant to ask you that.
Yes, I think everyone's over 18, so I think we're okay.
All right, good. We just wanted like a shitload of stilt walkers in our parade. So we started teaching people how to stilt walk using these like homemade like stilts. They're amazing. And that's how I learned, was first they taught me how to do it, so then I could teach other people how to do it. So that's kind of what got me into the circus stuff. But yeah, I'm looking to expand on that a little bit more. What I really want to do is trapeze stuff eventually, but it's hard to find places to do that.
There's a circus school here in Boston, and in fact, somebody at my gym, his background is he went to circus school, and he has us doing all this really cool stuff. Like, he has these like big sticks, and he tries to have us like balance it on our noses and on our hands, and like go up and down, and he does all these flips and with rings, and I'm like, I just want to like work out and go home. Like, I'm too scared to do any of that. But yeah,
it's so crazy. It's so fun though, and even like, because I've taken a bunch of classes in like aerial silks and stuff too, and it's just like a really fun way to like get a workout in too. So even if you're not like looking to do any of it, it's just like a different sort of workout, which is nice, and that's part of what I like about circus.
Yeah, and there's a whole field of yoga that's called like aerial yoga. Have you heard of this?
Yes, I love aerial yoga.
Have you done
it's so
it?
fun.
I wanted to try that because it looks so like elegant and fun and different, and like, yeah.
It's so cool because it just lets you get deeper into like, it's just another way to assist your poses. So it's so cool, and it looks like really awesome. It makes you feel so badass when you're doing it, because you're like, look at me.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. Like, I think it could even make me look like graceful. Oh
my God, you would look so graceful, Jenny. You look graceful anyway.
Oh, thanks. All right, so let's get into a little bit more about how you kind of got into wellness. So tell us a little bit about I know you went to IIN. What was your experience like there, and like, how did you go from, first wanting to go into the wellness field, and then sort of niching down to like food and mood, anxiety, depression? I know you work with a lot of that as well. So tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so I'd always been interested in health and wellness. I can remember like being a teenager, like staying up in my room and like just reading people's like live journals all about like their sort of wellness journeys and like what they're doing in nutrition, and like all, like that was just like what I read about in my spare time. And I don't think I realized until much later that not everyone was doing that, It's like, you guys don't read about this now? Okay. So it's just always something that was in the back of my mind. My youngest sister was diagnosed with autism when I was around 10 years old. So it was something that my family kind of dove into as well, just looking at like holistic ways to support her and each other or whatever. So it's just something that was always sort of in my mind. Went to art school, served with the AmeriCorps program, the Community Arts Collaborative, after I graduated for a couple years, which I loved because that placed us at all different nonprofits in Baltimore City doing art making with kids in particular. And I loved that work so much. But after a couple years of it, I started to feel super burnt out. And it was frustrating because I was looking around at my peers who were in the program as well, and they were feeling the same way. And, we had these check-in meetings, right, where we'd come together from all of our different nonprofits and check in and be like, oh, what are you working on? What's going on with your site? And the conversation always came back to, I feel terrible, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out. And it was just like, I felt like, how are we going to keep this, how is this going to be sustainable if we're going to feel like shit all the time? You know what I mean? And just looking at the way nonprofit staff in particular, they burn out so quickly that, they're in a job for like 3-4 years and then they have to leave because they just don't have the capacity to stay in those places anymore. And that was me too. And I was looking around and I'm like, how can we change this dynamic? Because so often, especially with like small grassroots nonprofit situations, growth really happens when you can keep your employees there longer term. So it was like, that was a big piece of it, kind of wanting to support these smaller nonprofit art situations. And the other aspect too, that really kind of like hit home and was like, I got to do this, was I had a girl I was working with at the art center who was a freshman in high school, and she was having a really hard time with all of her classes, and she was a smart girl, so I knew that she was capable of doing the work, that kind of thing. And we were like, you know what, we're going to help you out. We got her set up with a tutor from Johns Hopkins. We were so excited. We were like, we're going to get you, girl. We got it, So she, would come meet her tutor at the art center, and she was just so frustrated. She couldn't get through any of the work. She was just like totally over it, like just done, like couldn't focus. And it wasn't until I asked her about what she was eating that I realized what was happening for her. So she was skipping breakfast because she, was going to high school. A lot of kids do that. A lot of adults do that. You're just like busy, you got to go, whatever. No breakfast. Her mom would give her money to buy the school lunch, but all the school lunches were really disgusting. So she would hold on to that money instead. And then on her way home from school, she would buy what we in Baltimore called a chicken box, which is literally, that's what it's called. You get your chicken box.
A chicken box. That's great for a vegan like me, right?
I know. It's crazy. It's literally a box full of fried chicken and French fries, usually then covered in ketchup and hot sauce.
Of course.
Like you do. So on her way home from school, she would get her chicken box at the corner store, come to the art center and eat. So at this point, it's 2:30, 3 o'clock. It's the first time she's eating, and she's eating a fucking chicken box, Wow. And like, don't get me wrong, like I'd indulge in a chicken box here and there, but this is what she was doing every day. You know what I mean? It was every day for who knows how long. This was her kind of routine. So of course, by the time the tutor got there around like 4:30, she had crashed so hard because her blood sugar just spiked and then crashed immediately. It was like, oh my God, like, of course you can't focus in school. Of course you can't focus with your tutor. Like, this is what you're eating every day. And I asked her, like, oh, do you cook dinner at home with your mom, or, like, what's kind of there? And she said, oh yeah, sometimes we cook healthy. We make like mac and cheese and mashed potatoes. And I was just like, so frustrating to hear and it's like, you can't even blame her or parents or anyone, because this is what we're taught. You know what I mean? This is what the media teaches you. And it's just so frustrating to watch. And, I was already sort of in such a social justice-based place myself, and like just kind of taking it that next step, and like the way that like food is sort of another way to keep people down who are already in like really shitty situations, So
there's like a whole socioeconomic component to that, right?
Yeah.
Did you see the movie Super Size Me?
Yes.
Okay, so I think it was in that movie. There was that scene where they had taken like delinquent kids and they took them to this particular school, and they like completely revamped their diets.
Yeah,
it was all like vegan and organic, and like their behavioral problems, like I wouldn't say they vanished, but there was a huge turnaround in their behavior and their demeanor and their ability to like focus in class and like follow the rules and to get along with others and stuff.
Yeah, no, they made a huge turnaround, which is crazy, that it's like it's such a simple thing, but it's also such a difficult thing at the same time, because it starts from such a high up place that we're being fed this like garbage nutrition advice.
So true. And then also like so many people skip meals thinking like, oh, it's good, I'm skipping a meal, like I'm going to save my calories, or it's like some game you play, not realizing that then you have no resolve to make healthy choices because you are like ravenous, and you'll eat like anything that's in front of you. Like you'll even eat the box, not just the chicken box, but the box itself, because you're so freaking hungry. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like some silly game that we play. And with a lot of my clients, it's like that one change, like making breakfast in the morning, even if it's just something like small, like totally helps with their blood sugars and cravings throughout the day, and helping to have them make better choices and stay productive at work, and like all these other things.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's just like those little things but people don't even realize, and we're fed this advice, right? That like, oh, we should be just counting calories, and that's the way to measure health for some ridiculous reason, and it makes literally fucking sense.
I know, it makes me like livid.
I know.
So, wow. So that's really interesting. I also wanted to ask about your sister a little bit more, because, it was really interesting. Many years ago, like Jennifer McCarthy, I think wrote like a whole book about her autistic son, and how when she was starting to feed him certain foods, and she would see a lot of improvement just by changing his diet and like removing, certain like toxins and emulsifiers and chemicals that were in his diet. What do you think about that? Did that help with your sister too?
So there are certain things that we've tried to do with her. This is common with a lot of kids with autism or autism spectrum disorders. Their diet is already so limited. Many of them are, depending on the severity, like they just have like their like 5 foods that they'll eat, and that's it, So we have kind of tried experimenting with like doing a little bit more like gluten-free food with her, and I do feel like that has helped. We haven't tried the dairy-free thing, which I know has helped a lot of kids. So I feel like that's something that I'd love to dive into with her, but it's such, it's a gradual process for sure, because so many of them, when they, my sister in particular, if you throw off her routine, she's just like, no, so it's, it's tough because there are so many recommendations out there, but it's like finding the way to implement them is really, it's going to like vary person to person. So,
and when you say they have like 5 foods, is that like a textural thing, like a sensory thing, or is
for some of them it is? It's really interesting because I've watched like this group of kids that she kind of grew up with. She's almost 20 now. So, I've known like her classmates since she was a baby, and a lot of them have that where it's like they just are, those are the foods that they know and that they like, and they are like very adverse to trying new things. So I think for some of them it is a textural thing, that it's just like, this is different and I don't like it. But still every day, like she's surprising us. Like she, out of nowhere decided that she wanted like a sandwich, like a ham sandwich. We were like, what? Like she'd never before. And like her teacher was eating one and she was like trying to steal it from him. And I'm like, since when do you like this? But okay, let's run with it. Like just huge for her, for someone who was like eating the same thing over and over for how many years, suddenly to be like, ooh, I want that, is like amazing.
Yeah,
but
that's pretty amazing.
But it was really cool for her too, because we had, she was seeing someone who was doing homeopathy with her, and we found that really helpful too, which, I'm not sure what your thoughts are and feelings. I know that there's a lot of like back and forth with that, but she found it really helpful using a lot of homeopathy and sort of natural remedies and that kind of thing, which was it was cool to watch. And I feel like I learned a lot through that process too.
So I don't know much about it. I've seen like tinctures and stuff at Whole Foods, and I don't know a ton about homeopathy, but I've heard of it. Maybe we'll have an expert, a homeopathic expert.
Yeah, totally should.
But I think it's like really great to just try all avenues, right? I mean, as long as there's nothing like dangerous, like why not try it, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. Why not?
Yeah.
See what works. I feel like that's sort of my philosophy on most things when it comes to wellness. Like as long as it's not going to hurt you, like give it a try and see how you feel. And if you don't feel good, then stop doing it. If you feel good, keep doing it. That's sort of, that was the whole idea behind the journal too.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so cool. So tell us a little bit more about some of the work that you do with your clients, specifically around mood, and about, how you integrate food choices into changing mood or enhancing mood or things like that.
Yeah, so that kind of my interest in food and mood came from my own experience, where during this period of like extreme burnout while serving with AmeriCorps, I had like big flare-ups of anxiety and depression, which is totally normal when you get to that burnout phase. That's what flares up for a lot of people if you already are experiencing those things. So I was, I went back to Dr. Google and was just like looking at like, okay, like how can I be supporting myself more through like the choices I'm making every day. And a lot of that is lifestyle based stuff, right? Like getting enough sleep and stress relief and whatever.
Right.
But then like starting to look more at food, I learned a lot from my acupuncturist actually, which was really, really interesting. Cause when you think like, I'm going to eat healthier, right? And that's going to make me feel better. Healthier. I'm going to eat healthy, which means nothing.
I'm going to eat clean. No, I'm going to eat
clean. Fuck you. I hate when people say that. It just drives. I'm going to eat really clean for 10 days.
That's right.
Like, what does that mean?
And then I'm going to eat dirty after that.
Yes. I'm going to start saying that. I ate dirty today. But yeah, so I, in this sort of like quest to like make myself feel better, I started eating, like making a lot of like mason jar salads and drinking a lot of green juice and all these things, which work really well for a lot of people. And they did work pretty well for me for a period of time. I felt like that's what my body needed for a little while. I went vegetarian for a little while. It just like, I felt like that's what sort of my body was calling me to do. So I experimented with it and tried it. Worked really well for a while. And then I started feeling just that same like burnout-y, like anxiety, depression stuff. And my acupuncturist was asking me about like, hey, well, what are you eating? What's your diet like? And I said like, oh, I eat a lot of salad and green juice. And she was like, girl, it is January. Like it's too cold for that. You can't be eating all that raw food right now. Cause they come from the Chinese medicine perspective. And for them, it's very like you eat seasonally, you eat locally, because those are the foods that support your body at that time of the year.
Grounding foods. You need like stuff that's going to ground you in the winter.
Yeah, and I'd never considered that. I was just like, oh, like, there's still like ways to eat like healthy like soups and stews and, like root vegetables and all these things that are going to have like a heavier, more grounding property to them. And it totally helped my anxiety just like chill the fuck out, like it was amazing what a difference it made for me, where it was like allowing me to build up again from such a place of like depletion. So that's a lot of what I do with my clients now when we're working through either like one-on-one sessions or in my group program. We look a lot at like the energetics of food and how, okay, like let's look at how you're feeling, how do you want to feel, and like what foods can we sort of be incorporating into your diet based on that. So, a big part of that is like eating the foods that are grown in your region at the time, because it just sort of lends itself to that. But like you said, like having the grounding foods, those are things that are grown more in the winter. They are like root vegetables, literally things that are grown close to the ground, squash, carrots, all of these things, sweet potato. They're going to have a more like grounding, calming effect. Whereas in the summer, you get more of the like lighter, like tomatoes and, some of the leafy. Yeah. They have a lighter energetic quality to them. So they're going to kind of lighten you up a little bit. They tend to like have a more like of a creative sort of aspect to them. They're just kind of help brighten you up a little bit and like give you a little more energy. And because they're so light, like I feel like, you can do some of that in the winter, but it's more so like the way I was doing it was like all day, every day, and that was too much for my system.
And also like a good point that you're making about sampling a vegetarian diet and then deciding, this is no longer serving me right now, because I think people tend to be like sort of hard and fast and they're like, I'm on this diet. They almost define themselves by what they eat or who they are as eaters. And like there's different phases of nourishment. Like sometimes you need like a more optimizing diet if like you're training for a marathon, and sometimes you want to sample being a vegetarian because that's feeling really good to you right now. And then other times it's like, no, I need to eat meat. And like when you're pregnant, you eat differently, and when you're not pregnant, you eat differently. And it's like when you're growing, so it's like being respectful of the fact that there's no like one cookie cutter way to eat. And not only now, but like at different times of your life too. Yes.
I love that point, because I feel like that's the thing, like, and you're so right, that it's like what works for you today might not work for you tomorrow, or might not work for you 20 years from now. And that's totally okay. If I picked up and moved to Hawaii, I could probably eat raw vegetables every day and be fine, It's just so depends. There's so many factors. And it's like you said, just kind of being open and willing to like experiment a little bit, and like knowing that like, okay, like I'm not a bad person if suddenly I'm like off of this like one diet, right? Like this one way of eating.
Right, totally. Because again, we define ourselves like, well, I was on this diet and now it's not working for me, or like I eliminated this and I thought it would solve all my problems, but
Right.
now maybe you need to bring it back in, or maybe there needs to be something else that you experiment with. So
Yeah.
I think that's really cool, like that you had the, you know, the peace of mind to be like, okay, what is going on? Like I am eating healthy, but my body doesn't feel right. So it's, sometimes eating healthy isn't the answer all the time. I mean, obviously you're gonna want to strive for like healthy foods and so forth and balanced foods, but also like I love like focusing on like what are the foods of the season and where can you get it locally, and how can you prepare it in a way that's gonna like make you feel your best.
Yeah, totally. No, that's such a good point.
That's awesome. Cool. So when you work with people one-on-one, so you'll do a little bit of like a you'll talk with them about where they are sort of in their emotional state and sort of see what are like, do you do meal plans or anything like that? Or how do you work with people in that way?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I have a group program that I love running called Frazzled to Fierce, and that one has sort of a set it's 10 weeks, so like I kind of have a set plan for those 10 weeks that sort of is broad enough that we can like personalize it for that person. Like there's enough within each of the recommendations to kind of like figure out what works best for you in those topics. But I really love doing one-on-ones because it lets me really personalize things for people. So my process is typically I'll do a pretty extensive intake form and an intake kind of session where we talk for at least 30 minutes about like, where are you at? And like, what's your health history? And you know, what's bothering you right now? And when did you feel best in your life? And what's your diet like? And just, it's a ton of stuff. Cause I really like to get a full picture of the person, like even just asking about like work and like, you know, what are your aspirations for your career? And what's your family life like? And, you know, cause I feel like, kind of like you said that like, so many of us look to food to be like the answer to everything, right? Or that like, if I ditch gluten, I'm going to feel amazing and my skin's going to clear up and I'm going to be happy and I'll win $1 million. And you're like, that's not, you know what I mean? Like there's so many more aspects to your life besides the food piece. It's a huge part of it, but it's also like, okay, like what is my lifestyle like? Am I sleeping enough at night? Am I getting enough water? Am I moving my body? All of these things that sort of play into one another, and especially the emotional component. I feel like that's the part so many of us try to avoid as much as we can. Like I feel like even when I'm working with my clients, and I'm the same way, like I'll make every other change possible before it's like, let's talk about your feelings. I'm like, you know, like
the feelings. It's like
let's process those feelings.
I know so many people want to just kind of glide over that part, and it's such a like, you know, you talked about the burnout that you experienced. I mean, so much of that is like because you were taxing your nervous system, your central nervous system, because sometimes it's stress and sometimes it's because you're squelching all these emotions that you're having. You know? And there's nowhere to go except into your cells and to create malaise and illness and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So I feel like you can't talk about one without the other sometimes, you know? So that's why I love working with one-on-one folks, because it really lets me to like dive in a little bit deeper and see like what's going on and like really getting into those conversations that sometimes can be a little bit harder to have, you know? Because sometimes it's as simple as just having a conversation about a feeling that lets it kind of come up and out, and then it's, you know, like sometimes you need more, but sometimes just talking about it just gets that like healing process started.
Totally. So give me an example of a time like you worked with somebody around this, like with food, and like they had a total turnaround. Like that would be so cool to hear.
Let me think. Well, I did have a client more recently in my Frazzled to Fierce program who I love. She's a creative entrepreneur. She's just such a beautiful person, and she is so ambitious. She is working full-time, I believe full-time, maybe at another job too, and starting her own business. And it's just all the work she's doing is so amazing and beautiful. But she was kind of same thing, starting to feel like really tired and like trying to figure out like how am I balancing taking care of myself with all of these things. And we started making just really simple changes over the course of the 10 weeks, you know, like, hey, let's think about like how many greens you're getting in a day, or how about your water, how about, you know, like proteins and fats, all of these things. And she was so awesome about like, yeah, I'm just going to try all these things and see how it feels. Like that was she had such a great attitude about like trying things and being open to like just noticing how she felt. And, you know, within a couple weeks, she said she felt like her energy was way up. She was so excited about like all the new foods she was trying. She was like trying all these new recipes, and just like, you could just tell she had such a like zest for life, and which she already had, but it was just like, I felt like I just saw her energy
like
just
magnified.
shoot up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so cool to see. And I just feel like it's so nice to see that and be able to then, you know, I look at it like I'm supporting her creative business in that way. You know what I mean? That like, because if she's feeling better, then she can do more of her amazing work, you know?
You are totally enhancing all parts of her life. But also, like, sometimes you don't know how bad you feel until you start to feel better. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and then you're like, oh my God, I could feel like this. I didn't realize I could feel like this. And this is amazing. You almost get used to feeling shitty or not like your best.
It's so true. And I think that's part of why I like always come back to like the social justice aspect of it, is like so many of us walk around feeling like shit all the time, and we don't know that it's possible to feel any better. So we don't actually ever like seek out those answers, because this is just what we're taught, right? Especially as you're getting older, like you're just taught that like, well, you're just going to start feeling crappier because you're getting older. And I feel like that age gets younger and younger. You know, you're like, oh, well, you're 21 now, so you're going to start feeling crazy. You're like, what? Right. But no, it's insane. And I feel like it just is such a disservice to everyone. And it feels like just another way that we're all kind of kept down and, you know, not sort of empowered to be our best selves.
It's so true. Do you watch Orange is the New Black?
I haven't, and I need to. I know I need to. You're like the 100th person that's like, have you watched it? I need to watch it. I haven't like committed the time to like sit down and do it.
It's so good. I'm not going to do any spoilers here, but in this current season, they sort of address the whole nutrition thing and, you know, the system and behavioral change and stuff like that. So I highly recommend
awesome.
it. It's pretty vulgar, but not for the faint of heart.
I'm pretty vulgar.
I kind of love it. Yeah. It doesn't like bother me at all. So what if, like, let's kind of go through some of the foods that you might recommend to people, like specific foods.
Sure.
So if I was feeling like anxious, let's say, like I came to you and I was like, you know, just feeling like flighty and kind of amped up and kind of anxious, like what would you recommend? Like what types of foods would you think are best for that?
Yeah, so anxiety, anything that you feel like you need to like bring down the energy or just kind of have that calming sort of help and support, like any of the grounding foods are going to be your best bet. So things that are, like I said, these are the things that are grown underground or close to the ground. So think like sweet potatoes, even, you know, any kind of potato really, carrots, turnips, parsnips, squash is such a great one too. All of these have such a like grounding quality to them. And if you, especially if you're eating them, you know, in like soups or stews or just making sure that they're baked or like they're warmed, right? Like they're warm foods. You kind of have to eat them warm except for carrots. But they will just have such a grounding quality energetically for yourself. So I feel like it just helps to keep the anxiety, like, you know, takes it down a notch, I feel like.
Do you have to pair those with like a protein or fat in order to get the full effect of it, or does that not help?
That's a good question. I typically like to pair it with a fat in particular because fat also has a calming quality to it. When I'm building out a plate, I try to make sure that I always have like lots of vegetables, protein, and a fat, like a good fat mixed in there. So when I'm making food, I try to like just kind of always follow that blueprint. But that's a really good point. I do feel like when you pair it with a fat in particular, it does have more of a grounding quality than it would otherwise.
And so, like, what about on the flip side? Like, if I was feeling like melancholy or tired or just really like exhausted or depressed, like, what would you recommend in that case?
So in that case, especially, and this is another place that you kind of have to pay attention to the seasons, because if it's like summer, if it's like warm, you're kind of feeling that summertime sadness that, you know what I mean, that kind of sets in for a lot of us. That's when I would recommend the very light foods. So things like leafy greens that are raw, you know, like making salads. That's when the green juice really kicks in, like all of the things that are grown in the warmer months, like tomatoes, all the amazing produce you can get in those warmer months. They do tend to have more of an uplifting and energetic quality to them. So they help to boost your energy a little bit, make you feel a little lighter. But if you're feeling more depressed in the winter, I would kind of recommend sticking to more of the grounding foods as well, because I feel like depression and a lot of that when it sets in the winter can come from a place of like a nutritional imbalance and needing to kind of rest but not resting, because so many of us do that in the winter.
I don't know anything about that. I don't know what you mean.
What? You're not running around like crazy all winter?
What do you mean?
No, but it's so interesting because it's like energetically in the winter, our bodies are designed to kind of slow down and turn inward and be quiet and still. But the winters start with the fucking holidays. So we're all like crazy running around all over the place, and then it's New Year's, and then it's this, and then it's that, and by the time we have a break, it's like almost
March.
spring already.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, and that's when the energy starts to pick up again, so we never get that break. So I feel like if you are dealing with like tiredness and depression in the winter, again, you're going to want to stick to those grounding foods, because a lot of times it just means your body needs a break. And as much as you can really give yourself that time to just relax and chill a little bit, you're going to feel better.
That's awesome. You know what makes me feel really energetic? I don't know why, but it works every time. I love making a gazpacho, because it's like kind of spicy, and it's like got the tomatoes and the fresh vegetables, and it's like all blended together. It's like so refreshing. Like, how could you not feel great after that?
Right? Yeah, totally. I love that.
So in the program that I took, the eating psychology program, they talked a lot about foods that a lot of times we tend to eat foods that keep us in the mood that we're already in. So like when we're feeling anxious, maybe we'll have more like chocolate or caffeine or things that sort of keep us in that state, which almost seems like counterintuitive, but maybe there's like some science around that. I don't know. But we're like, when we're feeling kind of stuck, we'll eat more fatty foods, like fried foods. And when we're feeling angry, we'll eat foods that are like spicy. I don't know. Like, I don't know I think it's interesting. I don't know how much science is behind that, but what were your thoughts on that? Have you ever heard that?
I haven't, but like when you mention it, it kind of like, I feel like I've been there, right? Where it's like you crave those things when you're feeling those ways. Like, it's so true. Like when I'm anxious, typically I feel like a lot of times for me when I'm anxious, I'm also really tired. You know what I mean? So like, I feel like that's why I want like the sugar and the stimulants, because I'm like, I have to keep going even though I feel like my brain's going to explode. So it's like, I feel like part of it comes from like the symptoms that sort of accompany those things, right? Where like a lot of times if you're feeling amped up and anxious, a lot of that times it comes from a place of feeling tired. And when you're feeling like sluggish already, I feel like you're just wanting something comforting just to make yourself feel better for a second. You know what I mean? So you kind of are turning to those. It's so interesting to think about, though, that that's what you crave, you know?
You kind of crave the foods that kind of keep you stuck in the emotions that you're already having. Which is so silly, but it kind of makes sense to me, too. I was just curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's show the audience your website, because you have such a beautiful website, and I want to show everybody. So I'm just going to share my screen for a second, and it's showing wow, this is so meta. It's like showing my Facebook page.
This is so meta.
Okay, so now we're on your homepage. This is a beautiful site. So tell us about your kick-ass energy guide, because I linked it in the show notes, and I want people to know all about it and how they can get it and stuff.
Yeah, this is a free ebook I wrote. So if you jump on my website, which is just caitbyrnes.com, you can just throw your email in there and it'll just get sent to your inbox. And I wrote it because a lot of my clients, and myself included, we all sort of experience that 2 p.m. energy slump that's just like, it's such a bummer, right? Like you wake up feeling okay, but then by 2 p.m. you're at work and you're just like slugging along and you're just, you're so tired, right? And it sucks. And I feel like, I kind of always come back to like, think about how much more we can create if we feel good, So I just sort of laid out some of my like top ways to sort of beat that, right? So sort of like thinking about it from all those different aspects of like food and, lifestyle, and how can we sort of like get around that whole slump that we all sort of run into in the afternoon. So it's a good kind of primer on like how to boost your energy throughout the day and keep it more consistent instead of that like crazy up and down we all tend to do.
Yeah, and I've read that just naturally our blood sugars drop between 2 and 4, and so it kind of makes sense that we're like craving energy, you know, like we're kind of craving something, and because our blood sugars are low, we want like quick energy. So like, you know, sometimes we need a nap, and sometimes we just need some healthy food, and sometimes we just need to go for a walk just to like boost that. I'm sure you have all of that stuff in your book. So this is like a PDF like e-guide. Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's a PDF book that'll just get sent to your inbox. So you could read it on your, you know, on your iPad, or just, you know, flip through it on the computer, wherever you get it from.
This is great. And I'm just scrolling through your site. This you also have a free 5-day self-care challenge that you offer sometimes.
Yes.
Radical self-care for badass babes. So tell us about, you have like a free Facebook group, right?
Yeah, that's my free support group on Facebook. So it's for women identifying individuals, and I love to just kind of have a space for women to kind of come together and talk about things like, you know, like around nutrition and emotional support in a space that feels kind of safe for us. And it's really cool. I host the self-care challenges in there as well, and it's just become such an amazing community of women who now are all supporting one another through all of their challenges. It's just like, it's so cool to see, you know, because I feel like it started out when it was smaller, it was like me offering a lot of advice, and now I feel like I'll get the notification like, oh, someone posted it, and I'll jump in, and there's already like a bunch of answers from everyone else, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. Like, it's so cool, like just having them all support one another in that way. So
yeah, and I actually did your 5-day challenge, and it was so amazing. And when I first met Cait, what I loved about you, Cait, was that you send people like snail mail gifts. Like, you have digital gifts too, but you also like you send people stuff in the mail. And like with your challenge, you had like little gifts that you were giving to people each day, which was so awesome and motivating. So that, I highly recommend that one.
Thank you.
So let me just move back to our Skype session here. And before we finish today, I want, you wrote a book you have a food mood journal. So tell us a little bit about that. I linked the Amazon page so that people can buy that if they're interested.
Awesome.
Why don't you tell us the motivation for creating that book?
Yeah, so it's called Food for Thought. It's a food and mood journal, and I have it behind me there, and then I also have a copy right here, which I'm super excited about. But it's cool. It's a food journal, right? Like, I've always really loved food journaling myself, because it's one of the things that really helped me to figure out what foods felt best for my body at any given moment. So the idea is really that you just, use it as a place to log what you ate each day and then how you felt, right? So it's like breakfast, I felt this way, snack, I felt this way, lunch, I felt this way. And then a couple other things too, like water, your energy level, how was your sleep? And I also leave a place for gratitude every day to check in, just to kind of bring it back to being mindful, and that kind of thing. But I created it because I wanted something like this to use with my clients, and I could not find anything that I liked, honestly. There are a lot of really awesome food journals out there, but I feel like so many of them focus on calorie counting. And I just didn't want to do that. I feel like, calorie counting has its place in a very small number of situations, but for the vast majority of us, it's not helpful, and it can be extremely detrimental too. I think it very quickly can lead to disordered eating behaviors.
And it's so narrow because it doesn't incorporate all the things that went into place in terms of you eating those calories in the first place and why you felt called to eat that particular food.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, even myself, because I've done a lot of practice around like being mindful about like not getting too worked up about numbers and that kind of thing. But still, like, I remember, maybe it was like a year ago, I like logged into MyFitnessPal just to kind of like see like, well, what would it be, and like I felt myself getting so caught up in the like, oh, I ate this many calories and I didn't burn this many calories. And like, how is this app going to track that anyway? But it's just like frustrating, and I felt like I wanted a place for my clients to be able to like track what they ate and just how they felt, so that they could see, the correlation between those two. Because I work in, weekly check-ins and monthly check-ins, so you can like have that reminder to go back and say, okay, I'm getting a headache every day around 2 p.m. Well, what am I eating before then, or what's going on around 2 p.m.? Or maybe every time I'm eating dairy, I am really bloated, or, it's been really interesting to see what folks are discovering once they track what they eat and how they feel. And that's it. You know what I mean? Just like that simple. So
Right, because
I
then they can start
self-published
to
it.
see patterns emerge, right? And then you can have
Exactly.
like you can like dissect and be like, oh, this is what's happening every Tuesday at 2 because this and that and
Yes.
the other. That's
Totally.
awesome. Good. So I've linked the Amazon page where you can buy the book.
Cool.
In the show notes. So everyone make sure you look at the show notes and buy a copy of her book. And before we finish, is there anything else you want to share with the audience today about food and mood, or about you, or about wellness in general?
Yeah, no, I feel like my like last kind of bit of advice to leave you with is just kind of to remember to be open to experimenting, and I think that's something I always sort of try to drive home with my clients, and to remind myself that like every day is just a chance to experiment a little bit more. And it's okay if you don't feel that great today, because you can always tweak things. And it's just about being open and paying attention to your body and how it feels, and kind of coming to it from a loving place, and knowing that like this is all just a chance to get to our best place from a nutrition standpoint and emotionally as well. So,
and that's what I'm all about too. It's like the whole bio individuality, and like ending the food shame and the morality around food. It's so horrific to watch people label themselves as good or bad, and this food's good and this food's bad, and it's like it keeps us so closed off to experimentation, right? Because we can't become a detective. We can't explore when we're coming at it from fear as opposed to curiosity and wondering how it's going to affect us. So I think that's a great message for sure. And thank you so much for being my first guest. This was so much fun.
Thanks for having me, girl.
Of course.
This is awesome.
And if you have any comments or questions for Cait, just drop them in the comment section below. Feel free to give us some likes and loves, even if you're watching this on the replay. We still like those. And be sure to tune in every second and fourth Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Eastern for Food, Mood, Attitude, where we demystify and talk all about food and mood and wellness and eating psychology and so much more. Thanks for joining us today. Bye, guys. We're just going to jam out to some music, okay?
Yeah, let's jam out.
Let's jam.